Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is Dr. Martha Simmons with another session of Preaching and Preachers on Facebook Live via Restream. Good morning to my people on the West Coast who get up early and check out the broadcast, shouting out to people in the Midwest, the East Coast, and certainly the dirty South. It's a rainy day in Atlanta, but we don't have snow, so I'll take the rain. I will take the rain. Come on in and let me know that you are out there. Come on in. Let me know that you are out there. Okay. All right. Starting to see folk come in. And when you come in, tag somebody. Type in the name of another person who you know will benefit from this broadcast. It is Women's History Month. And so this is the broadcast for this month. We've got amazing guests. We're waiting for Dr. Stephanie Crumpton to join us. But I know this is going to be a dynamic broadcast. Come on in and let me know that you are out there. Shout out good morning or good afternoon in the comments. Come on in. Come on in. Here we go. Seeing people coming in quicker now. Yes, yes, indeed. Come on in and join me for I love the practical broadcast. Yes, we do the theoretical as well, but I'm talking to two Bible people, theologians, etc., who they can bring it. They can bring it. All right. Pastor Janetta Hatcher, good to have you with me. All right. All right. All right. All right. Come on in. Come on in. And we're just praying. We're not sure what is happened with Dr. Crumpton, but we expect that she will join us any moment. We expect that. Yep, we expect that she will join us any moment. But I'm going to go ahead and get started with the broadcast because I want the guests to have as much time as possible, no matter what. As always, let us pray for those who are sick. Let us pray for those who are experiencing a season of bereavement. And please join me in prayer for our mother continent. There are at least 9 wars going on the continent. And Russia and China are doing their best to do again what colonialism did. And so we're just praying for the continent. There's a lot going on. We know there's a lot going on here in America, but please do not forget the continent. And especially we appreciate those who are doing work on the continent. Just a couple of quick announcements. Next Monday, my guest will be talking about getting a PhD in African American preaching. If that is your interest, please come on and join us for that boycott. Also, we know that the 7th through the 14th, we are boycotting Amazon and Jeff Bezos and all of the stuff that he owns, all of his products, because he does not support diversity, equity, and inclusion. Do your best. I know that Amazon and its 50 million other projects, I know that he has a chokehold on America, but we're going to do our best. We're going to do our best to let him know what is important to us. All right. That said, Today, I'm going to talk about Black liberation, Black women and resistance. And I'm still waiting for one of my guests. And I'm just hoping, let me check again. Hold on here. Um, okay. All right. All right. Okay. All right. All right. Well, we will hope. We know that things happen. And so we were hoping that uh, Dr. Stephanie Crumpton, whose new amazing book comes out this fall, is able to join us. But I'm going to introduce both guests, and then we're just going to get right to talking about today's topic. Um, I'm going to begin with Dr. Stephanie Crumpton, who I hope will be joining us soon. She is a scholar teacher and ordained minister. She is the associate professor of practical theology at McCormick Theological Seminary, where she is also the director of the Trauma Healing Initiative. She leads this mission to cultivate a prepared community of learners and educators who take their knowledge, experience, and practical skills for trauma informed healing to bring about restoration in communities. She began her work in 2006, and her forthcoming book is "We Gonna Be All Right: Black Healing and Resistance 2012 to 2021, which drops this fall. It drops this fall. So we are hoping, as I said, that she's able to come on. And online with me right now, we have the amazing Dr. Angela Parker. I had her on a few months ago, and people just lit up my inbox saying, you got to bring her back. You got to bring her back. So I heard you, and I agree. I agree. She is the assistant professor of New Testament and Greek at Mercer University's McAfee School of Theology and the director of their certificate program in faith based social transformation. She received her BA from Shaw, her MTS from Duke, and her PhD in Bible, Culture, and Hermeneutics from Chicago Theological Seminary. In 2018, Dr. Parker received the Journal for Feminist Studies in Religion's New Scholar Award for her article. She is the author of many articles and essays, and her brilliant book that we're going to talk about a little bit today, If God Still Breathes, Why Can't I? Black Lives Matter and Biblical Authority, was released by Erdmann a couple of years ago. She is ordained in the Missionary Baptist Association of North Carolina. And how are you, Dr. Parker?
I'm so good. Dr. Simmons, how are you?
I am wonderful. I am wonderful. I am so glad that you are here. For everyone who has joined us, when you come on, type in the name of another person and they can jump on right now, or this will be up on my page for 2 weeks and they can check it out there. Let's go ahead and get right to it. And we're still, you all pray that Dr. Crumpton is able to get on with us. Uh,
Please.
Dr. Parker, I mentioned your brilliant book, If God Still Breathes, Why Can't I? In that book, you offer that Christians know more about the ways of whiteness than the ways of Jesus. What does that mean in times like these?
Yeah, so true. I think, especially Black Christians, we still read our Bible through white eyes.
Ooh.
And we have a difficulty even beginning to ask questions that can bust us out of the inerrancy and infallibility conundrum that we find ourselves in,
Mm-hmm.
because we
Mm-hmm.
think that there's only one truth that can be
Yeah.
found in our biblical text. We have
Yeah.
a difficulty kind of living in the both and nature of our Bible. I think a
Right.
lot of us grew up with it has to be one way or nothing else. And because we grew up with that, it has to be one way, that's a tool of whiteness, that one
Mm.
way or nothing else. And because we've always been a people who have been able to kind of move through things and recognize that the ways of whiteness don't benefit us. But when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to Bible, we
Yeah.
have really not gotten away from the way of whiteness in Bible is not benefiting us. So what
Yeah.
does that mean? That means that we have to be a little bit more critical thinking with our biblical text.
Mm-hmm.
We have to actually be engaged in conversations with our Bible. When
Yeah.
I talk about authority of the biblical text, I'm not talking about authoritarianism of the
Mm-hmm.
biblical text.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, and this is perfect for thinking about preachers. Preachers, in a lot of contexts, think that they are the last word on the Bible. But you have to realize that 5, 10 years from now, if you are a good preacher and a good biblical studier, your ideas, the way the Holy Spirit works with you, will actually change over
That's
five
right.
years
That's right.
as you're reading the Bible. So the sermon that you preached 5 years ago should not be the same sermon that you preach 10 years later.
Right.
So you have to move and change as the Holy Spirit moves and changes you. So that means that you will have a different understanding of the biblical text as you continue to grow and have conversations with it. That means conversations with the text, not the text saying, this is the way it's supposed to be, that happened in the ancient context from 2000 years ago, and we're supposed to slap it on our context today. That's what I would call biblical interpretation malpractice, where
Mm.
you take from 2000 years ago and try to put it on us today exactly the same way, where you would say women aren't supposed to preach or teach, or women need to be silent and not talk in churches, but should learn at home under their husbands. That's a biblical text. But what did that biblical text mean 2,000 years ago?
Right.
What was the context 2,000 years ago? What were they dealing with in Ephesus 2,000 years ago? How do you have that conversation and then have a smart conversation about that text today without just slapping that text on today's conversations? And when you look at especially white Christian
Yes.
nationalism reads Bible with authoritarianism. It
Right.
reads Bible with people like a John Piper or like a Robert Jeffers out of Dallas, who
Yeah.
say this is the way it's supposed to be understood. You have to understand abortion in this way. When did Jesus talk about abortion?
Yeah.
You have to understand segregation in this way, or you
Mhm.
have to understand that we are colorblind now. That's, words that they like to use. That I don't see color. Tell me, why did the people want to throw Jesus off a cliff in Luke chapter 4?
Right.
After he's read the scroll of Isaiah, he sat down, and they're like, we've never heard teaching like this in all of Israel. And then he says, the Elijah could have gone to all the widows, but he went to the widow of Zarephath.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says, Elisha could have healed all the lepers, but he went to Naaman in Syria. And Jesus then says, all he's talking about the foreign people. The people grabbed hold of Jesus and were ready to throw him off the cliff because Jesus was talking about the foreign people, the people who were not ethnically Jewish. The people who were about to throw Jesus off the cliff wanted to make Israel great again. And Jesus was not talking about making Israel great again.
That's
He
right.
was talking about bringing in the Naamans. He was talking about bringing in the widows of Zarephath. And so you can read our text and see Jesus is not about this make America great again or make this Israel great again idea or
Mhm.
ideology. That's how you read against whiteness as you're
Mhm.
reading your biblical text.
Yeah. And understand, and I was actually in discussion with a preacher about this a couple of days ago. And I think the name of the book is The Silk Road.
Hmm.
Um, and it basically takes you back even before the time of Christ and shows
Yeah.
you the layout of the world and how trade happened and etc. And it makes very clear that there was nothing white about the world. We had
Right.
never heard the word white. We had never heard the word white. White people weren't building pyramids. White people were not developing languages. We had never heard the word white. I think it's around 1648 or 50 before you even hear the word white. Okay.
Yes.
Uh, but once whiteness, especially through colonialism and slavery, gained a foothold, there was this attempt to wipe out everything that was not like whiteness, including changing Jesus so that those people who say they're colorblind, if they were colorblind, they take down that white Jesus in their churches. Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep.
you know, and thinking about that, uh, your work has been mostly in white churches or white,
Yes.
primarily white institutions. So in that, and I'm thinking about all of the sisters and brothers, especially who are working right now in these white institutions, what has sustained you? How have you taken care of yourself? How are you taking care of yourself now in the Trump at in administration? Him and the Broligarchs. What are you
Yeah.
doing?
The Brologarts are trying to take us out, y'all.
My God.
Yes, over the past year, I've really focused on my own fitness journey.
Mm,
So I'm a really big proponent of Orange Theory. I love my Orange Theory classes. They are my part of my own therapeutic training, I think. I have a boxing bag in my office. My office is down the hallway right here. So I pull out my gloves and I'll hit, and on my boxing bag, I have numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, where you can hit the bag at different parts of the bag. But I will imagine faces on
whoa.
those numbers. Yeah. And so it's good for me to imagine faces so I don't,
Whoa.
actually hit faces when I see faces. But yeah, and I I think my sabbatical came at the perfect moment as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because truth be told, working in a PWI and a predominantly white institution is
Mm-hmm.
also difficult
Yes.
because we all have good, well meaning colleagues.
Hmm.
We have good, well meaning colleagues, but even our good, well meaning colleagues can open mouth, insert foot when they don't realize it. And I remember right after the election, I had one colleague say, you have a right to be angry. And I said in myself, I don't need you to justify my anger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's not a helpful thing to say. I
Mm-hmm.
actually need you to be just as angry as I am
That's it.
and take up the fight that
Mm-hmm.
needs to be said.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I speak in predominantly white institutions, of course, as a Black woman, it comes off as loud, as aggressive,
Sure.
as whatever trope they want to put on it.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh my goodness, you're so angry. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm angry because we're seeing rights stripped away
Mhm.
immediately from us within the first 60 days of this administration. Why aren't you as angry as
That's the
we are?
question. That's the
That's the
question.
question. Right. And so we have to take care of ourselves and not allow that anger to overtake us, which
Hmm.
means therapy, exercise, tea, aromatherapy. I also love, peppermint in my diffuser, or also like mindfulness, geranium, lavender, um, what other scents? Rose in my
Hmm.
diffuser to fill the
Hmm.
house, because scent also helps calm you down. You need those practices that when you smell them, when your body gets the things out of you, yoga helps as well to
Yes.
calm your nervous system, to calm you down, because we are constantly overloaded with cortisol in our
Right.
bodies.
Mhm.
That's physical. And so you have to do things to release that cortisol, because if you constantly have higher levels of cortisol, then you're in a constant fight or flight response, and
Right.
that adds stress to your life. And as Black women, we stress even more. I was watching or reading an article about Black women in menopause, how menopause for us takes 10 years. It's more years for us to go through menopause
Right.
because of the earlier stressors in our lives. And I was
Absolutely.
thinking, Dad, we can't even go through menopause less peacefully because we've had all the other stress added earlier in our lives, so that when we get to
Yeah.
menopause, we still got to go through menopause worse than other women. I
Yeah.
mean, it's ridiculous.
It's
So
it's
we
it's
do have to,
insane.
right. We have to
It's-
do those practices.
yeah. There's a book called Weathering, and that's a good book for you all to purchase. I can't call the name of the author right now, but it's called Weathering, and it talks
Weathering.
about what has happened to the Black body, and
Mm.
especially Black women, and how we have been worn down and beat down over the last 400 years, and what that brings us to. And so you see people who could have achieved certain things, they could have enjoyed more of their life, but they were weathered so badly that it ended up, and that I was stunned when a gynecologist told me, you will go through menopause longer. I was like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And I didn't believe it. I really didn't believe it. And it's the truth.
Yep.
It's the unfortunate truth. And the weathering is part of that. And you have to come up with strategies to sustain yourself, or this stuff will make you crazy, take you out. And most importantly, it will just stop you from doing the purposeful work that you know you're supposed to be. Because that's the aim. We're going
That's
to
the
either
aim,
kill
right?
you, we're going to either kill you, or we're going to stop you from doing
Right.
the purposeful work. And one of the things that I've been talking to my sons and daughters in ministry about this recently is just telling folk to rest.
Rest. Yes.
Just rest. I'm trying to think of it. Which was the, when you do your blood pressure, where does the 80 go? Above or below?
Below
Below.
the systolic or the diastolic,
So it's
below the
80.
80
Yeah.
is below.
So I did my physical 2 weeks ago, and the physician's assistant, they don't want to take your blood pressure and
Yeah,
etc.
yeah.
And so she said, okay, your blood pressure is 118 over 80. And my
Oh,
doctor was like, what? Wait a minute. That's the blood pressure of a 40-year-old. Wait a minute. So she said, let me take it. When she took it, it was 117 over 80. And she
well,
said, what in the world are you doing? I said, I'm sleeping. I am resting.
right.
That's what I'm doing. I'm not all over
Yes.
social media, the TV, etc. For my body, I am
Yeah.
resting. I am
Resting.
resting. And I really want to recommend to a whole lot of folk out there, learn how to rest. I don't care what's going on around you. Take that afternoon nap. Uh, Whatever that work is, trust me, it'll be right there tomorrow. Learn how to rest. You know, Dr. Parker, your work, you are, you're on sabbatical, finishing up a project, and your new book that we talked about a while ago is Unlynching Faith. Oh my God.
Yes.
And you turn to the metaphor unlynching faith. Can you explain and unpack that metaphor for my audience? What are you talking about? And you all know we can't wait to get this one, unlynching faith. Tell us what it's about.
Yes. So, unlynching faith is this white Christian nationalism over the past few years has taken hold of our faith conversations in the United States of America. And the
Mm-hmm.
way that white Christian nationalism has talked about faith is through this idea of you have to adhere to certain ideas that are a show of what's on them a little bit, meaning the idea of something about abortion, you have to believe a certain thing about women, you have to believe a certain thing about politics, you have to be a strong Republican. Language of faith been choked because of the ways that whiteness has actually choked faith in our faith conversations of the United States of America. And so
Mm-hmm.
I'm the metaphor of unlynching faith actually turns to a lot of the martyrdom in our biblical text and the martyrdom language that we see in some of the outside sources of our biblical text leading up to the death of Jesus. So essentially, think about the work of James Cone, The Cross and the James
Mm-hmm.
Cone.
Yeah.
One of his biggest critiques of theologians in the 20th century, 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, was that lynching was going on, but they never thought to
Mm-hmm.
connect the lynching of Black folks to the
Yeah.
lynching of Jesus.
Yep.
Well, actually, our biblical text has connections of lynching, or what I would within our biblical text, that actually leads us to more biblical language about the lynching of Jesus. And so, if God still breathes, when I get to my chapter 4 and I talk about the faith of Jesus Christ, and I ask the question, what does
Mm-hmm.
Jesus have faith in? And what could Jesus's faith be? Yes, a lot of times people do not ponder what Jesus's faith is. People don't think about the idea that Jesus actually had faith. We live in the world that says, "Do you believe in Christ?" That's always been the answer that, or the
Right.
question that we've posed to other people. But we've never posed the question, what does Jesus have faith in? And so at
Mm-hmm.
the end of God Still Breathes, I talked about Jesus having faith in God, that God would raise Jesus from the dead ones. But as I've been doing
Mm-hmm.
more research, Jesus actually has more faith than that. And so when I talk about
Right.
unlynching
Yeah.
faith, it's also unlynching the faith that Jesus has in order for us to actually broaden our faith.
Right.
Jesus is so much more than the person to be worshiped and exalted. Jesus is also our example of what faith should be. So I'm arguing that unlynching faith means that our faith should not be held by the boot of white Christian nationalism, because
Mm.
really our faith is not breathing if it's held by the boot of white Christian nationalism.
Mm.
And that faith is so antithetical to Jesus and who Jesus truly is. And if we can get this boot of white Christian nationalism off of our necks,
Yeah, we agree.
we can
We
breathe.
agree. Yeah.
And then we actually can point out to those people today who are stunned that, oh my God, I've lost my job in this FAFO moment
Hmm.
because they effed around and now they finding out that what they thought was going to hurt other people
Right.
is actually hurting them.
Yeah.
And part of Jesus's faith was you actually need to care about other people, idiots.
Right.
And these people are not caring about other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what African American faith has always known. That if we cared, we're not just caring about ourselves, and that's what's very
Right.
womanist about it. We don't just care about ourselves. We don't do the things just to save Black women. We do the things that we do so that everybody can be saved.
Mm-hmm.
The 92% voted for Kamala Harris. A lot of the reason was for democracy, so that everybody would have a chance to thrive.
Right.
But people couldn't even understand that. And when people talk about this faith of Christ, the faith of Christ is so much more that actually expands our lungs, expands our language, expands our eyesight so that we view so many other people, so that so many other people, as I talked about in If God Still Breathes, I'm carrying on the metaphor in Unleashing Faith, that so many of us make it home, that so many of us actually have the tools, the livelihood to actually live. This administration is trying to kill us, and it's killing us in so many ways.
Yeah.
But for
Right.
me, I'm highlighting how the white Christian nationalistic way of this administration is really trying to kill us.
Yeah. And I think it's getting its help. This administration is being helped by churches who are actually
Yeah.
okay with hurting other people. They're
Yes.
actually okay, as if, and this has always amazed me, as if
Yes.
once you unleash a whirlwind, you actually know where it lands. The whirlwind is going to harm everybody.
Yep.
Okay, the whirlwind, and so many things. Like, for instance, if they close the Department of Education, so many white folk, okay, will never get a college degree, or at least not
Exactly.
one anytime soon. Okay,
Yep.
children in the 7th, 8th, 9th grade with autism, on the autism spectrum, will not get those services that are paid for by federal dollars. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things at the local level that people don't realize. They are paid for by federal dollars.
Yep.
That's the kind of stuff we're paying taxes for. But people were so busy trying to make sure that they harmed people that they didn't catch. If we unleash this whirlwind, we're going to get caught up in it too. We're going to get
Exactly.
caught up in it too. And we still keep missing it. But I think you raised the critical point. We never asked, what was the faith of Jesus?
Exactly.
What did Jesus have faith in? And therefore, what ought we have faith in? We don't even raise the question.
Yeah.
And then the obvious thing that Jesus showed us, which was the neighbor, we refuse that too.
Yep. Exactly. Who is your neighbor?
So when you talk about unlynching it and getting that boot up off our neck,
Yes.
what are, Black folk love the Bible. and the engagement of scriptures. So, which scriptures do you engage to
Yes.
begin talking about unleashing faith? Give me some
Yeah.
examples of some
Yeah,
your
sure.
go-to scriptures.
So my go-to scriptures, I'm basically interrogating four Pauline passages. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
in Paul, and it's amazing to me because these passages are, you have to realize that Paul essentially has been the the biblical scholars who read and interpret Paul are predominantly white guys. A lot
That's right.
of a lot of womanists, a lot of womanists
Mm-hmm.
in Bible turn to the synoptics. I think it's
Yeah.
Mitzi Smith, myself, Lisa Bowens at Princeton who do a lot of Paul.
Yeah.
So not a lot of
Yeah.
womanists do Paul, but I'm
That's
working
right.
on what are called the Pistis Christou passages. The
Mm-hmm.
Pistis Christou passages are the passages oftentimes in your Bible. You can read them and they'll say faith in Christ or faith in Jesus will be the translation. But oftentimes it will have a note that says, or could be translated faith of Christ. And
Mm-hmm.
so those passages are Galatians 2:15-16, Galatians 2:20, Galatians 3:23. So I'm in Galatians heavily. Philippians chapter 3, and also Romans chapter 3, Romans 3:23. So Galatians heavily, Philippians chapter 3, and Romans chapter 3. So the interesting thing about these passages is that Paul is talking a lot about justification by faith. And when translators translate it, they'll usually translate like Galatians 2:15. For we know that a person is not justified or made right by works, but through the faith in Christ. And they'll normally translate it through faith in Christ.
Mm-hmm.
But the actual translation, I would argue, should be we know that a person is not justified or made right by works of the law, but is justified or made right by faith, by the faith of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So, translators, and when I teach Greek, I tell students translators make decisions for you that you do not know that they are making.
That's right. That's right.
Translators make decisions for you that you do not know that they are making. And just because you read it in an English translation
Hmm.
does not mean that that's how Paul wrote it
That's
or
right.
that's what Paul's understanding would have been. I actually make the argument that Paul's audience would have understood what this faith of Christ would have been
Right.
and how God can place this faith of Christ within us so that Christ is both our example and the person that we are also exalting. That Paul is smart enough, and the people of the ancient world were smart enough to understand that. Who's not smart enough to
Hmm.
understand that?
My
Us.
God.
Right. Because translators, when they translate our Bible, they try to translate it for an eighth grade
Mm-hmm.
level. Now, when I tell students that, the first reaction is, well, I can't, you're telling me that I can't read above an eighth grade level? I'm like, no, that's not what I'm
Right.
trying to
Right.
say. I'm just saying that translators actually make the decision to keep translation of Bible very low so that it can reach more people. So I understand why translators do that. But for those of you who go to seminary and then go back to churches and preach and teach in churches, you're not supposed to leave your people at a low
That's right.
level. You're supposed to bring
All
them
right
up
now.
to the level that Paul is actually preaching and writing and talking about. So then, if you're actually discipling people, they're going to ask these other questions about what Jesus's faith is and what is God trying to do in order to get our faith up to Jesus's
All right
faith.
now.
Because our faith needs to be at the same level of Jesus's faith. And we're nowhere near
My
that.
God.
Because we're still struggling. We're still choking on this baby faith that we're stuck at because we refuse to take a look at biblical languages, or we refuse to actually dig deep into our text and ask these hard questions. We do surface level readings, and then we elect people who've only done surface level readings, and then they implant their ideas, their surface level readings of Bible onto the entire nation, and we're suffering on it on this entire time.
Not even 8th grade level. Not even 8th grade level.
Right. And they're also, as we've talked about, trying to disband the Department of Education, trying to make us even more dummied down.
It's
so I'm in Paul, and I'm looking at justification language. I'm looking at a lot of faith, looking at the faith of Christ.
Well, I think we're about to get Dr. Stephanie Crumpton.
Whoa, time out.
I think we are, Dr. Crumpton.
I think she's in the house.
I think you're in the house. You want to turn your camera on? We're going to give you just a second to get it together. We can tell that you're there, but your camera's not on yet. You may need to go out and come back in.
Okay. Yes. I thank my sister in the comments, Dr. Kimberly Rasa, who's talking about another reason to take biblical languages.
That's
friends.
absolutely it. I mean, one of the main reasons I went to seminary was to study two things: preaching and the languages. Preaching, that's right, preaching and the languages, because it was clear to me. It was real clear to me that something had gone missing between just the little bit of knowledge I had and the preaching I was hearing about women. I'm like, no, something is off here with this translation. Something is off here with the translation. So, I can't tell, and I tell preachers all the time, it is fine to go back. If you didn't get that Greek class, that Hebrew class, you can go back and take them. You don't have to tell anybody.
Yes.
Okay. And a lot of the classes are now online. Dr. Crumpton, can you hear us? Okay. We're still hopeful. We're hopeful, Dr. Crumpton. Can you hear us?
While she's getting situated, I do want to lift up one thing. I was disheartened this past week when the Association of Theological Schools put out their number, the rankings of the theological schools that have the most attendees. And I saw that Liberty University had the highest number of master's students in their education. For those of you who are thinking about seminary, please know that a Liberty University, a lot of these Southeastern or Southern Baptist seminaries, Regent, they are not teaching the ways that we're talking about reading the Bible. At all. So for those of you who are considering seminaries, you have to be very selective about where you go to, because in a lot of those places, you're going to get still white, Eurocentric readings of theology, of Bible, of how to do pastoral counseling, of preaching. And it's going to be difficult to reframe your mind after getting a seminary degree from a lot of these places. And a lot of us, when I say us, I'm talking about Black folk, we go to these places and get our educations from there.
And Liberty is giving, just tons of money and has for over a decade to bring in Black people. And preacher after
Yeah.
preacher I talked to say, I could afford to go there. No, you really couldn't. You really couldn't. It's too expensive. It's too expensive.
Right.
Dr. Crumpton, are you with us? Okay, not sure. Um, if she can't hear me, she won't know to uh go back out and come back in. Dr.
Let's
Crumpton,
see.
can you hear us? Mm, okay, let's just you know, Hope Springs eternal. Um, and I'm glad that you talked about the Apostle Paul, because the
Yes.
question becomes, because we give Paul more energy than Jesus.
Yes.
So the
Yes.
question becomes, for Jesus, it's understanding the faith of Jesus. And that's where we're
Right.
working to try to grow into that. For Paul,
Mm-hmm.
what's one of the main pieces that you tell people? This is how you would wrap your arms around Paul. I'm not a Paul fan, never have been, but you have to learn Paul.
Yes.
If you love,
Yes.
you just do. But
You have to learn Paul. Well, Paul is important because he's written
there we go.
about what, 60% of our New
You're
Testament.
right.
All right, I'll talk about Paul and then we'll let our sister Stephanie get in. Paul is important. I often tell people you take what is the good things of
Mm-hmm.
Paul, take the good things of Paul. And I really reject what is just, Paul, you talking nonsense, you
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
out your
yeah,
neck.
yeah.
I can't deal with
All
that.
right.
And that's what I do with Paul.
Dr. Stephanie Crumpton, yes, yes. We got her here. We got her here. Dr. Crumpton, we're just glad to see you. We're gonna begin.
So glad.
We're gonna begin with. We want to know about your new book. We are in an
Yes.
organizing time. Lord knows we need help. And I mean, people are confused, lost, angry, and a lot of people are just withdrawing. Talk to us about your new book. It's a book for this moment.
Thank you so much, both of you all. I will tell you in short that the time change got me.
Go right ahead,
Understood.
ma'am.
So from there, I will say the new book is called We're Gonna Be All Right.
Mm,
Healing and Resistance in Black Movement Spaces. The time span is 2012 to 2021. I think that the major takeaway for the book is that even as you're mentioning, Dr. Simmons, that people are withdrawing. I think
yeah.
I want to, for one, I want to acknowledge that there are good reasons for people to withdraw, not
Yes.
just the political reasons, but it's simply overwhelming what's happening right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So for me, some of it is withdrawal, and I'm talking about myself personally. Others of it is that I just need a minute to figure out what's going to take me out and what's not.
All
And
right
that's
now.
one of the, yeah, you got to figure you need. So I think rather than withdrawal, for me, it's a matter of stepping back and evaluating what you're looking at, and also evaluating internally as well as externally. What are we all facing out here as the changes keep coming down? We're having to make the distinction between an executive order and an actual thing that's actually happening, like people losing their jobs,
Mm-hmm.
versus the executive order that may or may not get enforced. So that's the first thing. The second thing is also to check in internally. And that means that internally inside of what each and every one of us is carrying each and every day, as well as internally about how are our communities doing. And that's what the book is about. The book
Okay.
is about learning from Black activists and organizers how to manage what comes up in times like this. There are about 4 or 5 different chapters focused on mental health, within movement space, how Black activists and organizers, as many of us are right now, evaluating the scripts that we've been given and narratives we've been handed down as an inheritance and a legacy from our elders and ancestors, but really evaluating how much of that should actually be taken exactly as it is. We
Mm-hmm.
need to take a critical look at it, see it as impact not only on that individual who handed it down to them, but also the communities to which they had a sense of belonging. And also celebrate that we were given these things, but also take time to kind of shift through it and say, now, wait a minute, what of this do we actually need to carry forward, and what of it do we need to retire as a way of honoring the legacy of our ancestors? Another piece that I pull from and these activists and organizers is that, and I learned this as a Christian woman working, observing their work. We talk a lot about beloved community.
Mm-hmm.
These folks are committed to it on a deep fast level in
All right.
ways that I see sometimes at times can parallel some churches and at times exceed some places when they talk about principled struggle, as Charlene Carruthers talks about it, and they talk about abolition. They're talking about it first within and amongst themselves. How are they agreeing to work through and navigate challenges and tension, and agreeing to work through mutual aid, agreeing to work through disagreeing but not dismantling somebody's dignity? What processes and ways are they using to navigate the tension that's from without but also shows up within? I think that's an important piece that allows them to move into some spaces that mean wellness and health and goodness for all Black folk, not just some Black folk, and in particular in movement histories and in our contemporary society. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
when we look at Black resistance, it will say we want freedom and liberation for all Black people, but when we look at who is standing up and doing what and the ways in which that's being enforced, the unacknowledged term is that they mean for the good primarily of Black straight men
That's
first,
right.
and then everyone
Okay.
else perhaps fits in where they can. That's
Yeah.
not what I found when a lot of the activists that I interviewed for the book. They were interested
Right.
in the wholeness of all Black people, and that's a space
Mm.
in which I learned deeply about what beloved community can look like.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
And I had to
So
talk fast because I was late.
no, you go. You good. You good. You're okay. You are okay.
God bless.
Uh. So if you're talking about the some of the organizers that you studied, uh, there's this whole discussion, and we've all heard it about what should the 92% be doing um, right now. What would you say to Black women, especially? This is Women's History Month, and the brothers can overhear. What would you say to Black women regarding what the 92% ought be doing as we're being asked to step up and help save this country one more time?
Yeah, so that's a tricky one because I recognize that today is Women's History Month. Also, in social media, we'll also see that today is National Day of Rest for Black Women.
Mm-hmm.
And I recognize that I have the privilege of being able to, for one, be late for a call, for two, not be at work having to sneak into a bathroom stall or take my lunch break to take a call. So I think
My
it's
God.
important for us to frame
Yeah.
who should be doing what relative to what's possible. Because rest for someone and work for someone is not, rest for Black women and work for Black women is not monolithic.
That's right.
We all have different experiences, different responsibilities. I'm a professional woman with no children, no spouse. I can move freely. I am a tenured seminary professor. I have control of my schedule. That is an anomaly in a lot of different spaces. So for me
That's
to
right.
talk about what the 92 should be doing is, I think, quite inappropriate. I think the
Okay.
question is for us to examine what are Black women doing in the micro ways that actually mean something for the large picture. When
All
Black women
right.
take care of their families, when Black women, before they take care of their families, they tend to their own mental, spiritual, emotional well being. When we pay attention to how we are, that is the work.
All right
Is
now.
a part of organizing resistance at
Mm-hmm.
home first to be well enough to be of a sane mind, right, of a solid spirit and a healthy body, then perhaps to be of support to those that we love and that we want to encourage and support. And that looks different for everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that if we want to talk about what should Black women be doing amongst the 90, as we are part of the 92%, first of all, is to recognize and acknowledge that it's going to look different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about organizing ourselves, like actual organizing, so now I'm moving to the macro level. If I'm talking about organizing, I
Mm-hmm.
think that has to do with, first of all, Black women need to evaluate how much energy we have to commit to wear, and that recognize that it looks different again for everybody. So
Uh-huh.
it could be that you happen to be the person who organizes the meetings, or maybe you make the meals, or maybe you are the keynote speaker, or you're the person who cleans up. All of that, I think, first of all, we need to identify, what do I have energy to give to?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We need to make that decision after you make the decision about how you're doing when you wake up every morning.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because it's not um, fair or realistic to presume that everybody has the energy to run out and do all the things related to direct action. And there's a difference between being an activist and an organizer.
That's
And
right.
this is primarily going to be focused on direct action. They're the ones you oftentimes see in the news. Organizing is the structure building behind activism. They are related, but they're different. And I think we need to evaluate what activism looks like. Maybe you're a teacher, right? Maybe you're an educator, taking care of those children and helping them learn how to actually read the books that are about Black history, and making sure that they know the stories about our Black heroes and sheroes at a time when critical race theory is being dismantled and Black books are being banned and Black history is being erased. I just saw that they're in DC, that they're going to have to remove the Black Lives Matter mural and also the street sign down the middle of the street. That's erasure.
That's right. That's right.
But if you're not part of the policy making, that's not your bag. But if you are part of teaching a class, or even reading to children at the library, or I'm sorry, being at home with your children, or reaching out to other children, you see what I'm saying? There are ways, there
Absolutely.
are levels to this, and that allow us to be able to be well and also active.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There was a 24-hour marathon not too long ago. And so many people, I don't know, I think I'm on every email list that exists in America about anything. and and I simply, developed one message to send out to everybody, which simply said, many of these groups I cannot help, but I can send you this much a month, and that's it.
Financially,
That
yes.
I can help you this way. So no, you don't save your emails, save the calls, because I'm at a season in my life where I can't do that.
Right,
I can't do that. I can give you some names of people who
right,
might be able to do it, but
right.
I can't do that. I can't do that. And I think that's something that we really do have to grab hold of and realize. I was talking to a pastor a few days ago who has two small children.
Mhm.
Okay, and she's really an activist at heart. And I said to her, honey, right now the biggest activist you can be is for them kids. That's the biggest activist you can be right now. Okay, there's some things you'll get to do later, but when you got kids that's not five, that
Yeah.
that's a big piece. So then we went into talking about caring for children and also helping others in the movement understand the importance of that, and how we support mothers. Go ahead, Dr. Crumpton.
I would also say that this also is not a moment for women like myself who are unattached in terms of having children and
Mhm.
having a spouse. This is not a time for us to suddenly overwork, because most of
No
us,
doubt.
if
No.
you are unattached in the ways that we normally assign to a woman to be in terms of being married,
Mhm.
or in terms of having children, or even if you don't have parents, if you're not taking care of anybody else but yourself, this is not a time for you to overspend yourself. Let
No,
me
no,
just say
no,
that to
no.
you, because there's a
Mm.
way in which um, quote unquote unattached women in that way,
Mm.
um, the there can be, and I have struggled with this before, there can be an internal pull that, oh my God, I have to do something because it's just me. And
Right.
then I don't remember the many ways in which I am giving and at times over giving in the spaces that I am. So that's everyday life before we hit November. You see what I'm saying? And so
Absolutely.
there's a way in which, and then there can also be kind of like a socialization that everybody looks and says, well, you got time, you got energy. No, no, no,
Well,
no, 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 no. Now I might not. And it's a
Exactly.
day by day mission. Today I
Yeah.
might, tomorrow I might not, and that it's okay.
yep.
This is not a call to overwork, whether you're
Absolutely
attached
not.
or unattached, because in some ways, some of this ain't our work.
Ooh.
And one thing you do
Let the
not
church
have
say
to do,
amen. Let the church say amen.
not all of it now, we got our own piece, but some of this, baby, is not our work. And one
Mhm.
thing I
Not
learned,
our work.
one thing I learned from a very visceral space is to not get caught up as a Black woman and white folks wiping out white folks' stuff. I learned
Exactly.
that very painfully in a
Mhm.
yoga class. No joke. We had this was during that first round when we were dealing with the first election of our current administrator.
Mhm.
And I was at a yoga in a yoga class led by a white woman who was very justice minded, and I was one of the few, if not the only, bodies of color in that class. And baby, she was determined to get those her brothers and sisters into their bodies around the struggling and the injustice, and it felt different. I said, oh, this was not for me. And you done pulled around and got in somebody else's work. And because she was committed to having them do their work, but that wasn't the same kind of work I needed to be doing with my
Absolutely.
body to
Yeah.
Absolutely.
experience those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from then I have always said, don't get caught up.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Don't
No,
get
Absolutely.
caught
they've
up
got
in
to do.
somebody else's lesson. Don't get caught up in somebody else's work with you.
They've got to do some work. You titled the book "We Gonna Be All Right,"
I did.
and when you look at, let's say we lose the Department of Education, let's say we lose the parts of the FAA, let's say we lose just one major institution after another. Why you say we're gonna be all right when it may take 30, 50 years to build them back if we get them back? Or is that what you're talking about?
So it's not what I was talking about. And this is why we're here.
Right.
So the title came from, of course, Kendrick Lamar's song that came out
Sure.
again. You got to remember, I was writing this book during the end of Obama's second presidency as we were looking at the first election and tenure of our returned administrator.
Mm-hmm.
And Kendrick Lamar dared to say we're gonna be all right in the middle of all that. So we're
Mm-hmm.
gonna be all right means survival. All right. If you like, somebody asks you how you doing, you're like, I'm all right. That doesn't mean you're good.
Right.
It
Mm-hmm.
means you all right. You
Yeah.
survived, right? And because I didn't want to put gone and all right on the cover of a book, I went with gone, gone, and then all right. But we know, so I was like, I'm all right. There's a mix
Mm-hmm.
in that. That means
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not taking out. I'm holding, I'm maintaining, as we say, but I'm not all the way done, right?
Yeah.
And so what I
Yeah.
would say is that it's an invitation for us to return. We're gonna be all right because we have been handed down legacies and narratives and histories that talked about making it through these kinds of times. We're talking about losing the institution. We're talking about go back to the stories when they didn't have those institutions, but they managed to still create the leaders that we now recognize in historical context, but they're part of the shoulders that we stand on. So when I say we're going to be all right, it's not a cure. It's
Mm-hmm.
not even about healing. It's about maintaining and then sustaining towards the effort of thriving. All right and thriving are not the same thing.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so I would say that we're going to be all right is about retrieving and for many of us learning, because this is the first time in my generation that we are not reading about this, we're living through it. This is our first time of actually living through this kind of
Yeah.
a thing. So
Yeah.
we got to
Yeah.
go learn and retrieve what helped our ancestors and elders. Do a critical retrieval. Don't just pick it up without looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
Examine what needs to be brought forward, what needs to be left behind. And that we're gonna be all right. Just like my mama on November 7th, when I woke up and I saw what had happened, I called my mama, and my mama said before she could tell I was about to spiral out.
Mm-hmm.
Mama said to me, we're going to be all right because we've been here before. And so
Mhm.
before I could really get to going, as she has
Mm-hmm.
seen at this point for 48 years, she knows the signs of when her daughter's about to spiral out. She said, we've done this before. We've made it through this before. So yeah, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be bad. Some of us are not gonna make it to the other side of this. Like I'm starting to
That's
watch how tempers are flaring. And when I say not the other, I don't mean it ideologically. I don't mean it politically. I don't mean in terms of we're not gonna be able to write about it. I mean literally, there's going to be some loss of life because I
Yeah.
am watching people become more on the edge, more violent. And I appreciate Teresa Fry Brown, who came and preached at Trinity a few weeks ago and just said from the pulpit, all of us are not going to make it.
oh
Not
no,
because
there's
I'm
no
really-
doubt about that.
and not because I'm looking forward to that, just so I can
Mm.
praise Jesus for bringing us through. That's not what I'm
Mhm.
talking about. But the
No.
reality is, all of us are not going to make it.
Yeah.
And for those who don't make it, I think it's our best. It is a sign of our testament of faith, and it is our best work to do something about those conditions that contributed to their demise, and that's
Yeah.
how you honor those who are not going to make it.
So you're
Yeah.
not gonna make
I
it.
mean, just that if you slash Medicare, just not at the 80% level, just if you slash it at 40, a lot of
Medicaid,
folks, they're not going to make it. They're,
Medicaid, they trying to slash
yeah.
people. I'm not sure for
Medicare,
those thousands of people who have lost their jobs. I'm not sure where they think those people are going to go to get. I mean, that's a huge cut to American workforce. It's not like in one state.
that's right. Yeah.
So everybody is not there's going to be loss of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is
They're
what we call
absolutely.
a damnable shame.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to reckon with that. And if we don't want it to ever happen again, we're going to have to do the things on the micro level and the macro level to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
We do our
Because,
best.
yeah, there's so much that could have been done to prevent this. But now that we're in it, we've got to do. I'm going to close with this. Dr. Parker, tell me what you're reading, because in times like these, people need some stuff to read or some audible to listen to. What are you reading or listening to?
I have to read for just pleasure. So I'm reading Harlem Rhapsody by
Hmm,
Victoria Christopher Murray. And this is
okay.
actually a good book it's a historical fiction, talking about W.B. Du Bois and Jessie Frost, who was the literary editor of The Crisis. Now,
Hmm,
I don't know if we've ever thought about W.B. Du Bois and his relationship with Jessie Frost, but it's a good book. You need to read
all
it.
right.
It's good for historical fiction, but the writer just throws out names that we should know if we've ever taken African American literature class. Like she'll throw out, and then Langston Hughes walks into the room and starts talking to Jesse about blah 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 blah, or County Cullen comes into the room and starts talking. So it's a really good read, and I would suggest it for pleasure reading, but also thinking about historical fiction. But also, I'm reading Salvation, Bell
Mm,
Hooks,
Yeah,
Salvation,
yeah,
Black People in Love. So I'm really
yeah,
trying to go back inward to thinking about how we are getting back to loving ourselves. Because as Dr. Crumpton has said, some things are not our fight.
yeah.
Some things are not our fight. And what does it look like for us to get back to being with our community and helping ourselves in this particular time period? So that's
Yeah.
what I'm reading right now in the midst of my writing.
All right, all right, all right. Dr. Crumpton, what are you reading?
Remember Love by Cleo Wade. Remember
Hmm.
Oh,
Love by
lovely.
Cleo Wade. It is a lovely book. She's wonderful. I mean, it's a collection of essays and small poems. And one of the things that I learned from the activists that I work with when I'm remembering with Cleo Wade is that what's going on out here, is not about love. It's
All
about
right now.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
about destruction. It's
yeah,
about several things that I won't waste time on. But if we can remember love for ourselves and our communities, we will remember that will be the thing that helps us as we make our decisions about the micro and macro level changes that
Yeah.
the micro and macro level changes, and also the small and large interventions that we're living into right now.
Mhm. And when is the
I love
book
how
coming
both
in?
of us are thinking about love.
Yes,
Yeah.
I noticed that when you pulled her up. I
Yeah,
love that. I
Yep.
love that,
yeah,
Dr. Parker.
yeah. Bell hooks on love. Dr.
Yeah.
Crumpton, when is the book coming?
You are so kind. It drops fall 2025. This fall.
Oh, good. Good,
Coming
good,
out
good.
this fall. This fall. Again, I apologize to your audience. That hour got me.
Look, stuff happens, stuff
And I was
happens.
gonna be really proud of myself for logging on like 10 minutes early. And I was like, Jesus Christ.
Stuff happens, stuff happens. Well, we're excited about the book
Yes.
because we know your level of writing and what you bring to a moment like this. So you can pre-order, am I right?
Not yet, but I will definitely share it to your page. It's not up yet. I literally just handed in the drafts back to the
Oh, okay,
copywriter. It is officially out of my hands. I've seen the cover, but as soon as they release the cover and make it available for pre-order, I will share it. I will send it to you, Dr. Simmons, to share with the community. I also have it available on my page.
all right, all right.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the kind of help that we need in a moment like this for a writer the caliber of Dr. Crumpton to tell us we're gonna be all right and why,
Pleasure, yeah.
as she looks back at some of our heroes and sheroes who showed us the way. And we also can figure out, as she said, some of the stuff we can't bring forward, but much of it will help us. So I keep hearing people say, remember the Montgomery bus boycott, remember and I'm someone who I did a 40-page paper on the Montgomery bus boycott. So I really, but I know her, so I don't do it. I want to tell some people there's some of that you don't even want to try to do. Okay.
Oh, yeah, there's some complicated pieces around pulling everything
Exactly.
forward.
Real
That, 'cause
complicated.
I'm
Right.
wondering about the people who, yeah, I wish I had been here on time. Because I got
Go
something to say
ahead.
about this.
Go ahead. Finish that thought. Go ahead. You run the
So,
room.
so I feel like I was just looking at a clip on social media, and it is some kerfuffle, shall we say, that's happening at Target. I did not shop it. I have not been to the Target. Let me just name that. I ain't been.
Mhm.
I'm not going. All right,
Yeah,
fine. But what I know is that a lot of Black and brown people work at Target, and it's not
sure.
just young Black and brown people, right? We
No,
seem
no,
to
no,
have
no.
thought that service positions are reserved for as something that you do as a young person. There are people who are full adults supporting
That's
families,
right. That's
and
right.
that's one of several jobs that they hold. And I have to
Yeah,
remember, when we start pulling from the past, some of these places that we were boycotting, the majority of them, we were not also working at them.
that's
Be
right.
And so
there.
one of the
Yeah.
things I'd like for us to start thinking about is that if the goal is shut that place down, what are we also doing to create jobs elsewhere for those people because they have to work? We could
Mhm.
boycott a place like Woolworths because we weren't working at Woolworths. You see what I'm
That's right.
saying? And
Yeah.
so it was a direct financial blow to white communities and white finances. But when we talk about shutting down entire organizations, major employers like Target and Walmart, I am not supporting them, but I'm saying what we need to do if we're going to do that, if we also don't want our own bodies left in the wake, we as a collective are going to have to come up with some financial and economic strategies to replace those jobs with different employers, Black owned, Black and brown owned employers, because I really don't want to have to look, I don't want to be the one to look a parent in the face as I'm talking about shut down, but I've not supported an option for them to be able to feed their children.
Mm,
It's complex, right? So I want us to have some more complex reactions and responses to what we are planning in terms of, and that it not just be a social media soundbite. I think
Right.
I'm seeing adults, I'm seeing people, mothers and fathers who are working the back rooms, who are working the registers. Where those people gonna go work?
yeah. Yeah.
So we
Well,
gotta do both. We gotta do it both and.
yeah, we've
This
got
is
to
why we also
definitely.
have to have really good conversations about capitalism in this moment
Yes,
as
Yes,
well.
ma'am.
Lord.
We've never really been good about breaking down how capitalism, Christianity and biblical interpretation in my field,
Yes,
how
ma'am.
they all come together as well. And how churches, especially these predominantly white churches and televangelists, feed off of capitalism, and how we need to unravel and have better conversations around that as
Yes,
well.
ma'am.
Got to. We've got
Yeah.
to have
Ma'am,
some
Dr. Parker, you
conversations.
absolutely have said it. Yes, ma'am.
We've got to have some conversations around capitalism and understand that some of these answers are very involved and they need to be
Yeah.
nuanced discussions and etc. And so we need to get to that definitely that deep level work rather than just the sound bites on social media and the post that we put up that sound good, but nobody thought through it.
Because I'm just thinking about the woman and man, the person, the human beings who work at these places. Now, look, you can't just say go and then it leave. Go where?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, there's so much to think through. I am grateful that you made it, Dr. Crumpton. I'm excited about the book, and Dr. Parker, I thank you so much for holding
Yeah.
things down
Yes, she
and for the
did.
wonderful
I
work.
know it was amazing.
she her next book is Unflinching Faith.
She's amazing. I have seen this
Unlynching,
woman in
excuse me,
action. I have seen.
unlynching faith. So we're
Oh,
excited about that as well. Thank you for everyone who tuned in today and for staying with us a little bit longer. Remember, you hit my Cash App. I appreciate it. I'm an independent scholar. I appreciate that. And last but not least, remember, two things. It's Women History Month. Next Monday, we're going to be talking about the PhD in African American preaching. And last but not least, share the video. It won't cost you anything, and it will help somebody. God bless. Dr. Parker, Dr. Crumpton, thank you all so much. Have a great week, everyone.
Thank you.